Magsasaka, magkakapi, sa hamon ng buhay, di ba magkakita? Ako ang iyong kasamang kaibigan, sa ating kapapagpayaman. Magsasaka tayo, magsasaka, magkakapi, magsasaka, magkakapi.
Ang programang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng Equilibrium Probiotics. Ito ay ang bagong food supplement na gawa sa mga piling gulay at prutas at dumaan sa isang masusing proseso para mapangalagaan ang inyong kalusugan. Ang Equilibrium Probiotics ay dinisenyo para sa kalusugan ng ating tiyan, tulungan ng pagkuha ng sapat na nutrisyon at ang pagpapalabas sa ating sistema ng mga nakakasirang toxins. Ang Equilibrium Probiotics ay may iba't ibang disenyo at sangkap base sa inyong pangangailangan. Mula sa boost para sa mga bata, fortitude, gusto day, miracle fruit, periwinkle, at ang pinakabago, liver fruit. Ang Equilibrium Probiotics ay may pagmamalaki ng produktong gawa sa talak. Ito ay mabibili sa Dashen, Geta Road, San Sebastian, Phase 3, Binauganan, Tarlac City. At para sa mga malalayong lugar, mabibili din ang produkto ng Equilibrium Probiotics sa Lazada. Ito ay eksklusibong gawa ni Ginang Malu Reyes Blu-ray. Ano pang hinihintay niyo, mga kasangga? Hala, bili na! MSB Kape at Balita sa Umaga. Hatid sa inyo ni Kuya Dong. Magandang umaga, mga kasangga, mga kakampi, mga kaibigan. Nandito naman po ang inyong Kuya Dong. Samahan niyo po ako sa ating Daily Dose of News, MSB Kape at Balita sa Umaga. Naghahatid po ng mga nagbabagang balita at kaganapan sa loob at labas ng ating bansa. Sa loob lamang po ng 3 minutos. Best effort. Siyempre, bago po natin na simulan ng ating pagbabalita, ngayon po Martes po, no? Martes, May 16. May 16 at mukhang kagaya kahapon, makulimlim na naman po ang panahon. Huwag naman po sana. At ayaw man po natin ng mainit na panahon, pero huwag naman po sanang umulan. Tama na po yung makulimlim lang. No? Alam naman po natin na hirap din po tayong magsipasok sa ating trabaho pag naulan. No? Okay lang yung nakauwi na ng bahay, pero yung papasok ka pa lang at umuulan, medyo problema po yan. Kaya, bago po natin simulan ng pagbabalita, tayo po siyempre simulan ng araw sa isang taimtim na panalangin. Sa ngalan ng Ama at ng Anak at ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Mahal naming lumikha, maraming salamat sa bagong araw na ipinagkaloob ninyo sa amin. Sa mapayapang gabing lumipas at sa patuloy na pagbuhos ng iyong mga biyaya sa amin at sa aming bayan. Naway ipagkaloob mo pa sa amin ang lakas at tibay ng loob upang mapaglabanan ang kasamaan at manatili po kami sa paggawa ng mabuti sa kapwa at pagsunod sa inyong itinurong tamang landas. Lahat ng gawain namin, inaalay namin sa iyong anak na si Jesus, na aming Panginoon. Amen. Sa ngalan ng Ama at ng Anak ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Let's start off with our headlines for today. Navy can help Coast Guard install buoys in the West Philippine Sea. Report by Delon Porcalia for the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. As more navigational buoys are needed to mark the country's maritime borders, the Philippine Coast Guard may turn to the Philippine Navy for help in installing more of them in the West Philippine Sea, according to a lawmaker. The Coast Guard should install more buoys in the entire breadth of the West Philippine Sea, from the northern part of the country in the Ilocos region to the south in Palawan area, because that is the extent of the Philippine territory waters China is claiming. Cagayan de Oro City Rep. Rufus Rodriguez, chairman of the House Committee on Constitutional Amendments, said yesterday in a statement. Coast Guard could also seek the help of the Philippine Navy in placing the buoys. Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Eduardo Año said the country needs more navigational buoys aside from the 10 installed recently by the PCG. I earnestly hope that the PCG continues to deploy buoys in other maritime features in the West Philippine Sea throughout the remainder of your term, Año said, addressing Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Artemio Abu. Año was guest of honor at ceremonies at the PCG headquarters, welcoming the return of 317 Coast Guard personnel who installed 5 of the buoys. Rodriguez said the markers should serve as a warning to the Chinese and other foreign intruders that those are a demarcation of our 200-mile EEZ or exclusive economic zone under international law. China should leave that area. They have no business occupying certain islets and sea features there, Rodriguez said, as he commended the PCG leadership for placing 5 new navigational buoys in areas in the West Philippine Sea coveted by China. The Mindanao lawmaker said the PCG should procure more buoys and that funding for the acquisition of the markers should be included in its budget proposal to the Department of Budget and Management and Congress. According to reports, the PCG installed markers carrying the national flag in 5 areas near the Spratly Islands group of Palawan, including Julian Felipe Reef, also known as Whitsun Reef, last month. In March 2001, the government protested the presence of more than 200 Chinese vessels around Julian Felipe Reef, which is about 175 miles from the Palawan town of Batarasa, or, or well within the country's 200-mile EEZ. About half of the ships left after the filing of the protests. A year later, the Department of Foreign Affairs again sent Beijing a diplomatic note complaining about the continued presence of Chinese vessels in the vicinity of Julian Felipe Reef. Rodriguez said the PCG should also place buoys near Bajo de Masinloc, also called Panatag or Scarborough Shoal, which is about 120 miles from Zambales and Pangasinan, and a traditional fishing ground of Filipino fishermen from the 2 provinces. That is clearly part of our EEZ, and yet China is occupying it. The Chinese Coast Guard routinely harasses our fishermen there, he said. China seized Panatag Shoal in 2012 after a standoff between the Chinese Coast Guard and the Philippine Navy. Sovereign markers. Let us show that we are promoting and supporting safe, peaceful, and free navigation. But more than that, we are serious and determined in protecting and defending our right, territory, and sovereignty, Anyo said. Aside from serving as sovereign markers, the buoys are also floating aids to navigation that direct fishermen and passing vessels to safe passage. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has made it clear that he will not allow any foreign power to take even an inch of our territory, and the guidance he provides is resolute. I am certain that the commandant of the PCG, along with the 26,400 Coast Guardians, have answered his call with patriotic fervor, Anyos said. This act of marking the boundaries with our national flag signals our unwavering resolve to safeguard our aquatic borders and resources. Furthermore, it underscores our adherence to global statutes, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which acknowledges coastal states' entitlement to manage their EEZs, he added. He praised the Coast Guard for vigorously performing its task, not based on brute force, but rather buttressed by international and domestic laws. Just last month, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel nearly collided with PCG vessel BRP Malapascua in the vicinity of Ayungin Shoal. Earlier, also near the Ayungin Shoal, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel reportedly directed a military-grade laser light at a PCG vessel. Indeed, it is very challenging time to conduct maritime patrol in our seas and guarantee the safety and welfare of our nation and our people. Yet you courageously sail and wade through the risky and troubled waters with your duty and mission burning brightly across the horizons, and you said in praise of PCG personnel. Especially amid an increasingly volatile West Philippine Sea and in the face of continued aggressions and threatening acts. PCG stood its ground as a reliable patroller in our territory, safeguarding our country and our people's interests, territorial integrity, sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdictions, he said. The setting of the markers went on, not without harassment from the Chinese. PCG spokesman Rear Admiral Armand Balilo said the Chinese Coast Guard ship was tailing the PCG vessel as it was laying the fifth navigational buoy near Julian Felipe Reef. He said the Chinese ship was some 2 nautical miles from the PCG vessel. At a briefing yesterday, PCG Maritime Safety Services Command Head Vice Admiral Joseph Coime said the service launched air patrol to check the location of the 20 buoys. He admitted there had been radio challenges from the Chinese, which he admitted could not be avoided because of the proximity of the claimed or occupied territories such as Pagasa Island and Subi Reef. Subi or Samora Reef is occupied by China and is reportedly just 26.5 kilometers from Pagasa Island, which is occupied by Filipinos. Additional report from Evelyn Macairan and Jose Rodel Clapano. Moving on to our headline news. Next headline news. DI's SRP for onions. Report by Belia Cariaso for the Philippine Star. The government is eyeing the implementation of a suggested retail price or SRP for onions. The agency is looking into the possible hoarding of the bulbs, a ranking official of the Department of Agriculture said yesterday. In an interview, the Assistant Secretary and spokesperson Christine Evangelista disclosed that the DA would also meet with stakeholders led by farmers group sa Mahang Industriya ng Agrikultura or SINAG to discuss the issues affecting the supply and cost of onions. We will have a scheduled meeting today. We invited the stakeholders amid increasing retail price of onions in the markets ranging from 170 to 200 per kilo, she said. She added that the implementation of the 150 per kilo SRP and the importation of onions would also be an agenda during the agriculture officials' consultation with farmers groups. The SRP will be part of the agenda, but before we can decide to impose an SRP, we have to make sure that we are using the right prices and we are all on the same page in terms of farm gate expenses of the traders, Evangelista said. An SRP of 150 per kilo will ensure profit for traders and retailers, according to the DA official. The SRP in the past was also a way to temper the price and price guide at the same time, she said. Evangelista mentioned that she would also coordinate with Assistant Secretary for Inspectorate and Enforcement, James Liu, to determine the inflow and outflow of onions in cold storage facilities to determine if there is hoarding of supply. The prices can be a manifestation of the problem in the supply, as we know that the farmers' harvest has already ended and the bulk of the supply was already sold to traders, Evangelista said. She cited farmers' complaints that traders bought the onions at low farm gate prices but sold them at high prices. The release of the stocks at cold storage facilities is something that we also need to look into to determine the volume of onions released in the markets, she said. The DA will finalize the volume of the white onions to be imported, according to Evangelista. We don't want to reach a point where we will only import when there is no longer supply of onions, she said. SINAG Executive Director Jason Kainglet earlier said the importation of at least 7,500 metric tons of white onions should be done to allay fears of shortage in onion supply, which he said was used by traders and importers last year to increase the retail prices of the bulbs. Kainlet added that at least 7,500 metric tons of white onions should be outsourced to prevent a similar situation last year, where institutional buyers like restaurants, fast foods, and hotels shifted to red onions because of shortage in the supply of white bulbs. We need to recognize the figures of the stakeholders and the BPI or Bureau of Plant Industry. We both need the right data to come up with the correct intervention and calibrated importation. The data they get is very important in decisions that we have to make, Evangelista said. Based on DA's monitoring in Metro Manila markets yesterday, the retail price of onions reached as high as 200 per kilo at New Las Piñas City Public Market, Guadalupe Public Market in Makati City, Marikina Public Market, and Mega Q Mart in Quezon City. SINAG President Rosendo So said that the retail price of onions is overpriced at 200 per kilo, adding that traders only bought the bulbs from farmers at 60 pesos per kilo during the harvest season. So added that the retail price of onions should only range between 130 and 140 per kilo. He noted that imported white onions should start to arrive in July to prevent another shortage after retail prices skyrocketed to 720 per kilo in December last year due to scarcity. So contradicted BPI spokesman Jose Diego Rojas' statement that stocks of white onions would last until September and November for red onions. He emphasized that the DA and BPI should finally conduct an inventory of the onion stocks in various cold storage facilities. So said the DA could still utilize the unused import permits when President Marcos approved the importation of at least 22,000 metric tons of onions last February. The DA still has remaining allocation after only 3,500 metric tons of onions arrived from the 22,000 metric tons approved by the President. Anytime the BPI can issue a permit to import, it only needs to finalize the date of importation, so said. Sugar imports. Meanwhile, Marcos approved another round of sugar importation to prevent prices surges and boost the country's supply of the sweetener. The Sugar Regulatory Administration or SRA, led by acting administrator Pablo Luis Asconia, recommended to Marcos the importation of up to 150,000 metric tons of sugar during a meeting at Malacanang. We agreed to an additional importation of sugar to stabilize the prices. The maximum amount will be 150,000 metric tons, but probably less, Marcos said. The president, who concurrently serves as the secretary, chairs the SRA board. SRA board member Maria Mitzi Mangwang, who represents sugar millers, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, Presidential Legal Counsel Juan Ponce Enrile, and SRA Board Secretary Rodney Rubrica were present during the meeting. Marcos said the government is opening the importation of sugar to all traders. Based on the SRA's forecast inventory, the country will have a negative ending stock of 552,835 metric tons by the end of August, the end of the milling season. The importation of another 100,000 metric tons to 150,000 metric tons of sugar is necessary to avert a shortfall, according to Ascona. In a chance interview, he said the final volume of the additional sugar imports will be made once the milling officially ends on May 30. The SRA said that as of May 7th, the country has enough supply of the raw sugar with beginning stock of 160,000 metric tons. The country, however, still needs to import an additional 100,000 metric tons to 150,000 metric tons of sugar this year, as the expected local production of 2.4 million metric tons and the 440,000 metric tons allowed to be imported under sugar order number 6, as well as the 64,050 metric tons under the minimum access volume mechanism would not cover the 3.1 million metric tons demand, according to a statement from the Presidential Communications Office. During their meeting, Asgona said Marcos that sugar farmers are happy with the issuance of SO6 and that they are benefiting from the stable farm gate price of raw sugar, which is averaging at 62 per kilo for the current crop year. It is higher than the 38 per kilo average farm gate price in crop year 2021-2022. To improve productivity, the President also approved the proposal to move the start of the milling season from August to September this year. That's important for the corresponding increase in production by approximately 10%, he said. For Ascona, opening the milling season in September would improve raw sugar recovery because it will minimize the milling of young cane. Marcos also ordered the SRA to expedite block farming initiatives to increase production. Block farming is a system by which small farm lots are consolidated into at least 30-hectare block farms. At present, 21 block farms in the country average at least 40 hectares each. Once organized into block farms, farmers are entitled to financial and mechanization support for increased production. The consolidation is an important part of agro-industrial production. We're looking at increasing the budget for block farming to accelerate the process of organizing the block farms, Marcos said. Additional report from Helen Flores. For top headline news for today, fuel prices up today. Report by Richmond Mercurio for the Philippine Star. A series of rollbacks comes to an end today as oil companies jack up pump prices. In separate advisories yesterday, oil firms said they would raise gasoline prices by 35 cents per liter, diesel by 1 peso and 40 cents per liter, and kerosene by 1 peso 20 cents per liter. The adjustments take effect at 6 a.m. Tuesday for most companies except for Caltex, which implemented the adjustments at 12:01 a.m. today, and clean fuels at 4:01 p.m. This week's upward price adjustments reflect the movement in the international oil market. This and the fourth consecutive weeks of reductions in diesel prices, as well as the 3 straight weeks of rollbacks for gasoline and kerosene. For our global news, Southeast Asia updates. Update on the election results for Thailand. Thailand's Progressive Move Forward Party, or MFP, claimed victory in the country's election Monday after a result that decimated military-backed parties that have ruled the kingdom for nearly a decade. A stunning surge for the upstart MFP in Sunday's ballot left it on course to be the biggest party, followed by its rival opposition, the Pheu Thai movement of billionaire ex-premier Thaksin Shinawatra. MFP leader Pita Limjaroenrat said he would seek to build a six-party coalition, including Pheu Thai. I am Pita Limjaroenrat, the next Prime Minister of Thailand, he told reporters at the MFP headquarters in Bangkok. Next global update. Updates on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. A Russian strike on the frontline Ukraine city of Avdiivka has killed at least 4 people and damaged a hospital, the regional governor says. 4 people died as a result of missile attack on Avdiivka. Russians attacked the city with missiles this morning, hitting a hospital, the Donetsk regional governor Pavlo Kirilenko said in a statement on social media. In our final global news update, Updates on the Sudan clashes. Also from Philippine Star. 1 month since Sudan's conflict erupted, its capital is a desolate war zone where terrorized families huddle in their homes as gun battles rage in the dusty, deserted streets outside. Across Khartoum, those still alive remain barricaded, hoping to dodge stray bullets and enduring desperate shortages of food and basic supplies. There are power blackouts, a lack of cash, communications outages, and runaway inflation. The city of 5 million on the Nile River was long a place of relative stability and wealth, even under decades of sanctions against former strongman Omar al-Bashir. Now it has become a shell of its former self. From Agence France Press to Philippine Star. Moving on to our regional updates. No flight cancellations during airspace shutdown. Report by Rudy Santos to the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. There will be no flight cancellations when the Philippine airspace shuts down tomorrow for maintenance of the uninterrupted power supply or UPS of the country's air traffic management system. Flag carrier Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific announced yesterday. The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP, will close the country's airspace from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. tomorrow. From the original 6 hours, the CAAP shortened the shutdown of Philippine airspace to 2 hours for the corrective maintenance of the Air Traffic Management Center (ATMC) system. PAL spokesperson Cielo Villaluna said flights departing from Manila during the shutdown period would be allowed to take off and land utilizing one of the two runways at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. Cebu Pacific's corporate communications head, Carmina Romero said, our flight schedules would proceed as normal. There will be no adjustments or cancellations. Steve Dalisan of AirAsia said the airline canceled 6 domestic flights, Manila to Davao, Cebu and Bacolod, and their turnaround flights. CAAP spokesperson Eric Apolonio said a new notice to airmen was issued to inform stakeholders and the public of the changes in the schedule of the ATMC repair. Apolonio said contingency measures would be implemented to help minimize disruptions to air traffic operations. Moving on to our next regional update. COVID-19 positivity rate in Metro Manila rises to 25.4%. Reports by Pia Librago to the Philippine Star. The 7-day COVID positivity rate, or the number of people testing positive for the virus in Metro Manila, increased to 25.4%, independent group Okta Research reported on Sunday. In a Twitter post, Okta fellow Guido David, said the figure was slightly higher than the region's COVID positivity rate of 22.7% from May 1 to 6. David said higher positivity rates were also recorded in Bataan at 20.2%, Batangas 33.7%, Benguet 20.3%, Bulacan 25.2%, Camarines Sur 46.5%, Cavite 36.9%, Isabela 36.6%, Laguna 29.9%, Oriental Mindoro 29.5%, Pampanga 24.8%, Quezon 42.7%, and Rizal 44.4%. As of May 13, David said COVID positivity rates in the Visayas and Mindanao were low, except for Aklan with 56.9% and Leyte with 21% respectively. The COVID positivity rates in other provinces were moderate, according to Okta. David said the nationwide COVID positivity rate reached 23.6% on Saturday. The Department of Health logged 2,109 new COVID cases on Sunday, bringing the total to 4,115,202. Of the number, 15,891 are active cases and 4,032,858 were recoveries. COVID deaths have hit 66,453. Mag-iingat po, may COVID pa. This next update, regional update. A sad day for our teachers. Here is the news. CHR probes red tagging of teachers. Report by Elizabeth Marcelo for the Philippine Star. The Commission on Human Rights yesterday launched an investigation on the supposed red tagging of members of the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, or ACT, by the Philippine National Police, National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, NICA. The CHR has consistently condemned the carte blanche act of red tagging, especially when coming from elected government officials. As the country's independent human rights institution, the CHR cannot stand by idly amid the persistent red tagging of students, educators, and civil organizations, the Commission said in a statement. The CHR said it received a report from ACT regarding an orientation that was organized by officers of the PNP and NICA for the students of Carlos L. Albert High School in Quezon City on May 2. The orientation supposedly focused on the alleged recruitment of students by teachers affiliated with the New People's Army. The CHR in particular takes cognizance of the presence of armed police personnel within the school premises, which is a violation of the Department of Education's Order Number 32, Series of 2019, or the National Policy Framework on Learners and School as Zones of Peace, the Commission said. As part of our mandate, the CHR, through its National Capital Region Office, is conducting an independent probe on the incident. We are also looking into other alleged incidents of red tagging against ACT members in Regions 5 and 7, the CHR added. The CHR also condemned the alleged red tagging of ACT by Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte, who was recently appointed as Vice Chairperson of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. Duterte has repeatedly tagged the teachers group as a supporter of the NPA, this is Maria Josep, Communist Party of the Philippines and National Democratic Front of the Philippines. She had criticized the act for its unrealistic and impossible demand to hire 30,000 public school teachers and construct 50,000 new classrooms per year. In the case of ACT and other teachers group, red tagging only serves to undermine the credibility and professionalism of our educators, the CHR said. Basta kontra NPA. Tama. Moving on to sports. Good news. Updates on the SEA Games. Brownlee takes over as the last gets SEA Games payback versus Indonesia. Report by John Brian Olanday for Philstar. Gilas Pilipinas exacted sweet vengeance on reigning champion Indonesia, essaying an emotional 84-76 comeback win in the semifinals to stay in hunt for a gold medal redemption. With their backs against the wall Monday night, the Nationals took a flurry of punches in the first half and rolled with it in the end game to erase an 11-point deficit and advance to the last dance of the 32nd Southeast Asian Games at Morodok Teko Stadium Elephant Hall 2 in Phnom Penh. Justin Brownlee rose to the occasion once more with a 34-point eruption, highlighted by back-to-back triples in the clutch as the Filipinos quickly ended Indonesia's reign and forged a finals duel with the new threat and host Cambodia, which dealt them a 79-68 loss in the elims. Brownlee, the newly minted Philippine reinforcement this year, plays his stellar outing with 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks for a full line in 35 minutes of play. Brandon Ganuelas Rosser, 13, and Arvin Tolentino, 10, provided aid for Brownlee as the Filipinos kicked Indonesia out of their throne only a year after rising as the new Sea King at their expense. Gilas bowed to Indonesia 85-81 in last year's Hanoi SEA Games but made sure this time for the history not to repeat itself. Licking the wounds and nursing the bruises of that historic defeat that dragged the Filipinos for only their first silver medal in 3 decades. Gilas came out with extra fire and desire behind the searing second half run. Gilas steered at an early 27-38 deficit following Leicester Prosper's stray for Indonesia before slightly moving within striking distance at 38-45 at the break. The Nationals stepped on the gas with a fiery 11-2 rally capped by Rosser's slam to steal the driver's seat at 49-47, only for the Indonesians to weather the storm and take command anew at 65-60 after 3. Then Brownlee's magic happened, with Gilas on brink of elimination and relegation to mere bronze medal match. Brownlee ran roughshod with 8 straight points to flip a 70-74 deficit to a 78-74 lead in the last 2 minutes. The Filipinos actually trailed by 64-71 in the last 7 minutes before going on a wild 22-5 closeout.
including Brownlee's 13 points in that stretch as they arranged a rematch with Cambodia to complete an unfinished business. Former PBA import and now naturalized player Lester Prosper, 26, led Indonesia, which slug it out against Thailand for the bronze medal. Moving on to our next sports update. Also, good news from the SEA Games. Gilas women coming home with silver. Report by John Brian Olanday to the Philippine Star. Dethroned as champs, the Gilas Pilipinas Bells. The Gilas Pilipinas Bells did the next best thing, beating Malaysia 77-63 in the virtual playoff for second place at the close of the 32nd Southeast Asian Games Women's Basketball Tournament yesterday at the Morodok Teco Stadium, Elephant Hall 2 in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. The Nationals led from the get-go and never surrendered the driver's seat to end their campaign at 5-1. Good for second spot behind New Queen Indonesia that swept the tournament 6-0. Indonesia, last edition's silver medalist, previously smothered Gilas 89-68 to deny the latter a three-peat. Gilas also took care of business despite the costly defeat and took the next biggest prize with a coast-to-coast win over Malaysia behind the 24 points of Janine Pontejos. The Gilas team captain fired the 5 triples that went with 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals with Kate Castillo, 18. Backstopping her with 4 threes of her own. Camille Clarin, April Bernardino, and Chuck Cabinbin added 9, 7, and 6 points respectively, while Jack Animam hold down 6 points and 13 rebounds in her SEA Games return. Animam did not play in Hanoi, Vietnam last time due to knee injury, but Gilas still successfully defended the crown. Completing the roundup for today's news, our final report for sports. Updates on the NBA. Tatum scores 51 as Celtics oust Sixers. From Agence France Press to the Philippine Star. Boston. Jason Tatum poured in an historic 51 points on Sunday to lead the Boston Celtics to a 112-88 Game 7 victory over the Philadelphia 76ers and into the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. Tatum added 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and a couple of steals, and the Celtics' suffocating defense neutralized newly minted NBA Most Valuable Player Joel Embiid as Boston booked a return date with the Miami Heat, the team they beat in 7 games in last year's conference finals. Jaylen Brown added 25 points for Boston, who broke open a close game in the third quarter as they outscored the 76ers 33-10. Philadelphia went 6 minutes of the period without a basket and trailed by 26 heading into the fourth when Boston pushed the lead to 30 with less than 4 minutes to play. His 51 points eclipsed the Game 7 record of 50 set by Golden State's Stephen Curry against the Sacramento Kings in the first round this month. It was a bounce back performance for Tatum, who struggled for long stretches in the series with and endured a horrific shooting night until drilling four crucial three-pointers in the fourth quarter of the Celtics series extending Game 6 win on Thursday. He began fashioning his Game 7 masterpiece in the opening minutes. The 76ers turned an early 6-point deficit into a 29-23 lead through one quarter, while a nip and tuck second period. So the Celtics up 55-52 at halftime. Then the Celtics blew it wide open in the third. Tatum scored 17 points in the period, draining four of his six three-pointers as the shell-shocked 76ers struggled and failed to find a response. Going into Game 6, I was too locked in. I was too tight thinking about what I need to do, how many points I need to score, Tatum said. After a light-hearted practice on Saturday, Tatum said he was more himself. That's when I play my best, is when I am having fun. It was another crushing playoff exit for 76ers and Embiid, who was held to 15 on 5 of 18 shooting. Philadelphia's Doc Rivers fell 6-10 in Game 7 as a coach. That's the most Game 7 defeats of any NBA coach in history, and Rivers remained without a Game 7 win on the road in his coaching career. The 76ers had the third best regular season record behind the Milwaukee Bucks and Boston. But between but even with Embiid enjoying an MVP season, it failed to translate it into postseason success. They have reached the playoff for six straight seasons but haven't made it out of the second round. Tobias Harris led the 76ers with 19 points, but Boston limited the Sixers to 37.3% shooting from the floor and harried them into 14 turnovers. Star guard James Harden scored just 9, making 3 of his 11 shots from the field. Boston veteran Al Horford did a terrific job guarding Embiid. He scored just 6 points, but grabbed 10 rebounds with 2 steals and 3 block shots. Rivers said the drought set in for the 76ers in the second quarter. We were playing so well. We trusted, the ball was moving, and then we had what I think it was 3 or 4 turnovers in a row, Rivers said. And that concludes our news roundup for today, May 16, 2023, Tuesday. Before we close our reporting, uh, shout out to the listeners. Grace Bernales is good morning. Grace, good morning. Dexter there is watching. Thanks, Dexter, for joining. Kevin Coloradi is watching. Si Admin Sol is also watching. Thank you, Admin Sol. Ate Julie is watching. Good morning, Ate Julie. Si Mate Peterson Malyari, si Bro San is watching. Good morning, bro. Good morning. At sa lahat po ng mga nanood at umantabay sa MSB, Kape and Balita sa Umaga, maraming salamat po sa kanila. And this concludes our reporting for today. Thank you very much.
MSB, Kape at Balita sa Umaga. Hatid sa inyo ni Kuya Dong.
Pagpapit sa hamon ng buhay, di pa magkatino. Ako ang